Hello, this is Dr. Jason Munsell. It is, you can see this, it is about 3 o'clock on Thursday, January 28th. I hope you are enjoying this very lovely day. I'm back at home. I know you can't see this, I don't know why. Hopefully some of the other slides, yeah, sort of, we'll see. I've decided, since we were going to cover chapters 11 and 12 this coming week, to sort of break them up, in part because I had a really busy day. I got had quite a few things that I needed to do, and some meetings and everything like that. I should get up. Never mind. Delicious. It's water with lemon in it. So I'm just doing chapter 11 for this little thing here. And I really enjoyed chapter 11. I thought it was really pretty clear cut. And I'm sort of framing this because you can see the PowerPoint. I found it's got gold bars on it, because what they offer us when they talk about issues of ethics are golden opportunities. And speaking of golden, I think most of you know, or some of you know, maybe none of you know, my love of solid gold. And so, to sort of start us off, and you probably won't be able to see this very well, but you too can go to YouTube and search for solid gold or solid gold dancers. This is from just the first little bit of an episode in 1980. Hopefully you'll be able to hear this. It's awesome. I want a suit like that.
Ladies and gentlemen, here to count down this week's top 10, the Solid Gold Dancers.
Look at that dancing. That's awesome. I need to have that outfit. If I wore that to school, I'd probably get fired. I wouldn't bite the dust. Another one. Finn. Yellow. Okay. You'll see how that makes sense later. Okay, golden opportunities here. But first, second slide. Intro to chapter 11 in this book right here. It talks about that crazy, the crazy dude, Kenneth Lay. I don't know if you've seen the stuff online about don't be like somebody, blah, blah, blah. Kenny used the hear no evil, see no evil defense. Kenny was an unethical, lying piece of poop. Don't be like Kenny. So basically it talks about how there's a lot of examples from Enron, from Bangladesh, to the Catholic Church, and all that type of stuff where they have showcased unethical responses to crisis situations. And so we want to make sure that we are ethical. And so that's what this chapter really is all about. That even if a crisis is not caused by unethical situations or unethical conduct, there's always ethical implications. But then, what is ethics? What is ethics in the first place? And so what the book talks about is its basic judgments about what is right and wrong, good and bad, desirable and undesirable. Ethics are the values, standards, principles, or guidelines we use for making these judgments. Now, one of the things that's really important to me is that ethics is sort of situational and fluid, and the book does sort of get to that at the end. Um, and I sort of say this, but know that they're rhetorically constructed. Values are rhetorically constructed. What we think is right or wrong is structured through our language, through all sorts of different things like that. It's cultured. And so one thing that is important is that even though they talk about when judging behaviors is wrong or unethical, that we are indeed applying a standard set of values. When they start talking about issues of standards and what makes what a good person and all that type of stuff, it's complicated. I'm an educated person. This is sort of the end, and so I'm not very keen on absolutisms or moral absolutism. And I know that can be controversial. I know a lot of people cling to moral absolutism. The thou shalt not kill. If somebody's trying to kill me, and I've got a pen that's mightier than the sword, I'm going to stab him in the eye. I'm going to defend myself. So, it's all contextual. But there are set standards of ethics within context. And the context that we are in this particular class is a crisis situation. But this is what's really important. This is actually a really big point. It's really important to understand. At the end, the key paragraph here that I want you to remember, and it's on the bottom of page 214, blah, blah, blah. These ethical judgments, whatever, however, not easy to make. Some people look to universal ethical standards that can apply to all circumstances for all people. While universal standards would make ethical judgments much easier, most researchers agree that the specific situation is an important factor in determining how to apply ethics. In addition, ethical standards vary quite widely among cultures, communities, and professional groups. What might be considered an appropriate ethical standard for attorneys might be very different in the case regarding a public relations professional. What is considered ethical conduct in China? I think that's a typo. In the China cabinet. In China might not be considered acceptable in South Africa or Brazil. So everything is situational. And so that's when they start talking about ethical judgments are more comprehensive when they take into account situational factors, different values, competing loyalties, complex duties and obligations, and some of the stuff they talk about, like conflicting interests and all that type of stuff. So it's important that you understand, please, and you always have multiple stakeholders, so it's very important that you understand, Finnegan, no. Finn, no. You're just going to make it worse. No licking. No licking. No, Finn. No, please. Dog has a problem with his paws. Much, much better. But I took the cone off of him. I might have to cone him again. So that's unbelievably important. And so when we're talking about all this stuff, please know that it's ethics is much more complicated than just having these universal lists of this is always going to be the right thing to do, because that ain't the way things work. Okay, so here are other sort of big picture things that they offer before they get into the golden opportunities. Have you ever had the opportunity to go to Hardee's? I don't eat there. I just go get free refills. Corporations as moral agents. I thought this was really interesting because oftentimes when we have thought traditionally about ethics, it's been from issues of a person, of human beings as being moral or immoral. And so can we think of organizations as human beings? The Supreme Court thinks so. That's why people can give all that money with Citizens United or whatever. It says organizations, because they are not humans, cannot be held to human-based ethical standards. Based on this, some have argued that only individual managers can be held morally accountable. When an organization does something wrong, it must be traced back to the individual who made the decision. If a manager can't blah, 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 then people are scapegoated, blah, blah, blah. But this is what's important. And it talks about responsibility, moral accountability, and scapegoats. But organizations need to work together in collective ways to become a moral agent. So I do think we need to think in terms of organizational culture and the organization as a moral agent. Yeah, an organization is not a personal Supreme Court, but folks need to work in collective ways to make organizations moral agents. And that's generally the idea of what they're talking about in this particular section on page 215. Some people call this organizational culture, organizational ethos, what have you. But there is this sense that we can look at an organization in a sense as a collective, but as an individual entity that has core values, ethical standards, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Corporations should be moral agents, in other words. Next, values. What's a value? Do you value values? I do. What is a value? And there are ethical judgments. Blah, blah, blah. Values are the larger positions we have learned and that inform our attitudes, beliefs, and ultimately ethical judgments. So that's generally what values are. What do I value? I don't know. I value solid gold and dancing. The ought-tos, the shoulds, the ideals, the norms, the goals, and all that type of stuff. I talked about how the Public Relations Society of America, their core values are advocacy, honesty, expertise, independence, loyalty, and fairness. So basically, there's a set core values, but sometimes there are, we don't always agree on what the values are. And sometimes, what this organization might value might not be what this other organization values, just because, and also just like this human might value this while this other human values this. But they sort of get into the fact that even though there is disagreement, there is context, and everything like that, there's also this idea of competing value view. It says there is almost always a disagreement in any given situation over which values are most important and which values might apply in a situation. Often, before a decision can be made, these values need to be discussed, debated, and sorted out. It talked about the example in California, to balance out, these safety versus, psychological well-being, or I don't know. But basically, it's a balancing act. The problem is, a lot of people, their value is profitability over humanity. But the problem is, and again, what they're talking about is that oftentimes there are ethical values that are in conflict. And so what do? You got to sort of balance that out. An example that resonated with me are obviously schools and colleges. Schools and colleges, however, blah, blah, blah. So you don't want the disease to spread, or whatever disease it might be, like this funky Zyke was I don't know. I can't remember what it's called. I'm sure we will learn it. Schools and colleges, however, value learning and education and were reluctant to change their attendance policies. One university tried to balance these competing values with the following measure. This is a quote from whatever college or university. Students with flu symptoms will be expected to balance their academic responsibility with the social responsibility to self-isolate. In return, students should expect their instructors to demonstrate reasonable flexibility, blah, blah, blah. So trying to balance out. We don't want to spread the flu, but we also want to teach you. So that's a little section on values. Again, notice here that they're talking about how this is a little bit more complex than just, hey, I got this list of stuff and I'm going to apply it to everything. It's more sophisticated than that. Values in crisis is the next little section. And what they're basically doing here is setting up what they see as, actually that's the four sort of, we can't see it anyway, ethical standards or opportunities that should be prominent for organizations during a crisis. So basically, crisis creates, psychological, for victims, physically, psychological, economical vulnerability, Values that are important during times of normalcy and stability may not be as critical during a crisis situation. In many cases, short-term concerns about budgets need to be set aside so that immediate needs of victims can be